Hey cuties, it's me, Mind Piss. You like that noise? The noise in the background? That's construction that's been going on for a week non-stop. The Gray Goo is the name for a hypothetical end-of-the-world scenario first described by Kim Eric Drexler in his book, The Engines of Creation. The book was about imagining how nanotechnology, which if you're not familiar is essentially just microscopic autonomous machines, and how that might change the way we live. The Gray Goo is a potential danger of that technology going berserk. Here's how it goes. You got a little nanomachine, it's programmed to make more nanomachines just like itself. Now say for whatever reason, human error, malfunction, deliberate malice, doesn't matter, the machine is told to manufacture more and more copies of itself with no limit. Each machine it makes more copies of itself, pulling in more and more matter until all matter on Earth is a uniform mass of these tiny machines. A Gray Goo.
Nanomachine, son!
Now here on Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure //youtube.com/thoughtslime, we're very pro-goo. But even I must admit this is a frightening scenario. Not a likely one, as even Drexler points out, but still, you can imagine it. And while I have my misgivings about the likelihood of such a science fiction scenario playing out in the real world, I think the Gray Goo scenario makes a pretty good analogy for capitalism's death drive towards infinite growth. When exactly do you think capital will be done making money? How much money is enough for the handful of ultra-rich jackasses who have most of it already? If there were an answer to that question, we long ago sailed past it, because several of them own incalculable sums, so much that they could not spend it in 1,000 lifetimes, and yet they don't stop. Despite the consequences, the human cost, the environmental cost, they keep going. It's not enough to simply have money, they have to earn more and more and more. The biggest businesses don't measure success in terms of profits anymore. If you make $1 million one year and then $1 million the next year, you've stalled out. If you make $2 million one year and then $1 million the next, your business is failing, even though you made $1 million. It's time to reevaluate your strategies, maybe reshape your leadership. Your success no longer about profit, it's about growth. But there's a problem with this model, a problem that's evident to everyone but economists and business people. At some point, however distant, there's an upper limit on how much money you can possibly make. There are only so many resources to be extracted from the earth until there aren't any left. And then there are only so many consumers to purchase your products before demand inevitably plummets. But still, you can see why this is a particularly dangerous attitude coming from companies whose products are destructive to extract, manufacture, or consume. It's dangerous for fossil fuel companies to want to extract and sell as much fossil fuel as they can, given the disastrous effect this has on the environment and the limited, dwindling fossil fuels available to us. It's dangerous for cigarette companies to want to get as many people hooked on cigarettes as they can, because then all of the teens are going to look so cool that they won't follow rules anymore. And what are principals and deans going to do? And people have difficulty imagining the scope of this problem. We tend to anthropomorphize large businesses as though they're just people that want to get rich and are willing to do anything to do it, which would be bad enough. But it's so much worse than that, because they're trying to get money that meaningfully makes no difference to them. They don't seek out some sort of goal where they have enough money to give themselves and the people around them what they want. They get that, and then they keep going forever. Or more realistically, until they can't anymore, until they've used everything up. And at that point, we are doomed. Like the Gray Goo, there is no shutoff switch. There is no way to say, you've done it, you've made enough. It will single-mindedly continue the process until it physically can't anymore. There is nothing which will make them stop, as evidenced by fossil fuel companies learning their practices were affecting the global climate in potentially apocalyptic ways in the fucking 1970s and choosing to hide that information and just keep going business as usual for 50 years. The prospect of ending life on Earth as we know it was not enough to even get this process to slow down, let alone stop. Hell, we couldn't stop these companies from speeding up. And here's the truly spooky part. Here is the thing that keeps me up at night. I don't think that this is simply a result of human greed anymore. I mean, undoubtedly, that's a factor, especially early in the life of any business, but after a certain point, these corporations become, in effect, autonomous beings with a sort of emergent gestalt will of their own. A corporation is legally required to produce value for its shareholders. Value is a bit of a deliberately vague term here, but most people interpret it to mean just heaps and heaps of money. Just big stacks of moolah. No one individual in a corporation has liability for the crimes of the entire thing, just whatever decisions they personally make. The liability of the crimes of the business belong to the legal person of the business. John Shell or Dave Nokia. That's what limited liability means. If you've ever seen LLC, it's Limited Liability Corporation. That's what that means. No one individual, or even really a group of individuals, is liable for crimes committed by the business as a whole. So say you're John Business. You're the CEO, Chief Intergage Officer of John Co., a publicly traded company that produces tuxedos for snakes. It turns out that the tuxedos are killing snakes. The bow ties are too tight, just pops their head right off. But the fine for killing snakes en masse represents a small portion of the revenue you receive for your tuxedos. So even if you personally love snakes, and who wouldn't, there's not a lot you can do. While you might not legally be required to kill snakes for your shareholders, they have pretty strong leverage over you. If your bleeding heart snake-loving bullshit gets in the way, they'll just fire you and replace you with a new CEO who hates snakes. And they don't even really care if you kill all the snakes and doom the business, because all they have to do is wait until profits are projected to dip, and then they just sell their shares and walk away. Shares will probably be more expensive until that time because they've been selling tuxedos like hotcakes. So it's the shareholders that have responsibility, right? They're the ones calling the shots. And yeah, sort of, maybe some of them, but a lot of them are going to be people who just invested in mutual funds or whatever, or guys whose stock portfolios are managed by other businesses who likewise have a fiduciary responsibility to produce value for their shareholders. And the people at those companies might not even choose what companies they invest in. They've given that power to giant supercomputers who trade millions of times a second in deliberately obtuse and Byzantine ways that even their own tech people don't quite understand. And so you tie all of this together in this huge elaborate web of businesses running other businesses, running other businesses, in this endless feedback loop of limited liability decision deferral, seemingly designed to force people to make profitable decisions at the expense of common sense, where actual human decision-making power is limited to doing whatever makes money, regardless of the impact, whether or not anyone actually wants to do it. A human being intuitively understands that growth cannot continue forever. We understand the concept of finite resources. But this system, and I hate to use that term because I know how it sounds to complain about the system, but what else are you gonna call it really? It's a system, it's a big system. The system does not. It is a machine left running with no end condition. It's like a computer program with a Stack Overflow error. It'll just go and go and go until it can't anymore. It doesn't and can't care if everything along the way gets destroyed. And it's also kind of unclear if the people involved in the creation and maintenance of this system could even stop it if they wanted to, which they don't, of course, because it gives them absurd amounts of money, just science fiction, imaginary, theoretical numbers amount of money to have sex with or whatever they do with it. I'm not defending them. I'm just saying they're like Frankenstein, powerless in the face of the monster they have created. And likewise, we, the consumer, particularly those of us in the West, bear some responsibility for this too. We buy shit we don't need and throw away perfectly good shit that other people could use. The role of the individual consumer in this crisis is often used as a scapegoat by the capitalist class, but that doesn't mean we're without fault here. Let's be realistic. I don't need this DVD Blu-ray combo disc of Ghoulies 1 and 2. I bought it because I promised to record a commentary track for Ghoulies as a Patreon goal like 2 years ago, and I never did it, but for some reason, literally no one, not one single person has ever mentioned it to me. Like, I guess that wasn't as motivating a goal as I presumed it would be. There are generally two solutions proposed to fix the problem of capitalism's death drive towards infinite growth. If we're going to manage production so that it doesn't, end the world, how do we do that? One idea is proposed by the worst scum on the planet, and the other by people who actually wish to fix this problem. Next week, we'll look at the bad idea, austerity, and the week after that, we'll look at the only option we have left, degrowth, and how that doesn't necessarily mean your life has to get worse. And hey, while we're on the subject of out of control, all-consuming forces in pursuit of infinite power, consequences be damned, while we're talking about powers far beyond any individual person's conception, acting in ways that are inscrutable to us in service to an agenda we don't understand but secretly fear. If you think about it, in a lot of ways, that's kind of like the eyeball zone, if you think about it. It has a lot of similarities to the eyeball zone. Oh shit, I gotta do that. Hello and welcome to the Eyeball Zone. Here in the Eyeball Zone, we highlight small leftist projects that need some dang eyeballs stuffed into the empty crevice that used to be their body. We hollow them out and fill what remains with eyeballs until they are no longer them, they are us. Well, we're having a lot of fun, but let's all get really sad and angry. In her perhaps unfortunately named video, How Did We Get AIDS?, Little Hoot discusses the colonialist origin of the HIV/AIDS pandemic, through to how it spread throughout the United States. I knew a lot of the details of the story already, but it's one of those subjects that the more you look into it, the more shocking details you learn about just how much the powers that be did not value the lives of queer people, drug users, or Africans. Be prepared to be extremely mad when you watch it, but please do watch it, because at the time of this recording, it only has 153 views, and it deserves at least 1,000 times that. This is a subject that's difficult to confront, but this is not a difficult video to watch. Do you have a small project you'd like to see featured here in the Eyeball Zone? Send no more than one email to thoughtslimeeditor@gmail.com with the word eyeballs somewhere in the subject line and pertinent details like your pronouns, and perhaps you will find yourself trapped here in the Eyeball Zone. Loving the sound of those jackhammers. Thanks for watching the video. You know what I need. You know what I crave. It's them likes and subscriptions. Hand them over. This is a robbery now. I'm switching bits in the middle. Now it's a robbery. Hand them over. I got a gun. I'm taking your money also in this robbery at patreon.com/thoughtslime. And I'm showing you my and also, I'm forcing you at gunpoint to go to youtube.com/ScaredyCatsTV to watch videos about horror movies. It's a very strange robbery I'm doing, but that's the bit. That's the bit? That's the bit. Goodbye.